Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. So, major drama related to the Epstein files as the vote finally gets the go-ahead and new emails are released directly tying Trump, not just with Epstein, but specifically Epstein's sex trafficking. However, it's also World Kindness Day. So, can I really do this? Yes, I think we can make an exception for Donald Trump today. So what's happened briefly before we go over the details? Well, yesterday began with the release of yet more documents, including candid emails from Jeffrey Epstein claiming that Trump knew all about his girls. This is a bit of a smoking gun because although the MAGA faithful are perplexed that Trump has U-turned on his promise to release the files, including the client list, they didn't think he was personally implicated. Yes, I know. Now, obviously, Trump has been a close friend of Epstein's. That's not proof in itself that he knew anything about the sex trafficking, much less was involved himself. There'll be any number of people who were close socially to Epstein who will have genuinely known nothing about it. Trump's public breakup with Epstein before the shit hit the fan also gives him a bit of cover. So MAGA supporters may have imagined that Trump has backtracked to protect other powerful men, but not himself. But this email, which was not intended for publication, so it's candid, almost certainly represents what Jeffrey Epstein viewed as the truth. Discusses how Trump knew all about the abuse, spent time with the victims, and was, as Epstein put it, the dog that hadn't barked. The email was from the time when the legal net was closing in around Epstein. So basically saying that Trump wasn't grassing him up about the abuse, even though he knew things. Now, this isn't absolute proof, but it is strong evidence that ties Trump not just to Epstein, but specifically to the abuse and knowing about it. It changes the entire dynamic of Trump's refusal to release the files from protecting well-connected men, possibly Republican donors, possibly others who've done Trump favours, which is bad enough. This now suggests that Trump is blocking the release to protect himself. Mind you, surely he's had enough time to get the FBI to redact all traces of his name from the files, or are there just too many? When the emails were published by Democrats, the White House immediately described it as fake news. They claimed that the Democrats were releasing them as a distraction from the reopening of government. This is possibly true. Some Democrats folded on the government shutdown when it was the Republicans being blamed and have now doomed goodness knows how many Americans to being unable to access affordable healthcare very soon. This has made the Democrats more widely even less popular amongst progressive Americans and even some conservatives who want Trump stopped, who are already tearing their hair out at how shit the literal only other option to Trump is managing things in opposition. So I can well believe that the Democrats would want a distraction from all that, throw something out there which can unite people in opposition to Trump again. But that doesn't stop the publication from being both relevant and damning for the president. The White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the victim referenced in the email, whose name was redacted to protect the innocent, was Virginia Giuffre, as she'd made clear that she was never required to service the orange one, therefore the email was fake news. However, this logic doesn't stack up. Two small flaws with this claim. The first is that the victim referenced in the email was described as having spent hours with Trump. Therefore, the victim in the email cannot have been Giuffre. Second, what about publishing the email without the redaction then? The redactions are there to protect the identities of the victims. Nothing else should be redacted. But if Leavitt is allowed to announce that the victim in this case is Giuffre, she's named her, right? Then she's already voided that redaction. So just publish the email in full, right? Oh, she can't? Is that because the redacted name is not that of Virginia Giuffre? But if that wasn't enough excitement, the House finally swore in a Democratic candidate who won a special election 7 weeks ago. House Speaker, Republican Mike Johnson, had blocked her for nearly 2 months because she would represent the final support needed to force a vote on the release of the Epstein files, set up by both a Republican and Democratic representative to signal the cross-party nature of the support for release. So the vote was finally triggered yesterday. The vote is going to take place next week. Now, Johnson could have delayed the vote a few more weeks. He's chosen not to. Now, in theory, he has publicly supported the release of the files, but that could be doubted given that he has impeded this vote for weeks. And even tabling the vote early Might be a sign that he wants to avoid protracted reporting and lobbying on the vote, just wants to get it out of the way quickly so that, he can no longer stop it. Maybe even just to have getting ready for the holiday season overshadowing it. Now, a successful vote won't trigger the release of the files. If the House passes the bill, it would then have to go to the Senate. I've not seen any reports of any chance that the Senate will even vote on it, much less pass it. And even then it would have to go to Trump, who could release them unilaterally without any prompting from Congress. That he is not doing so indicates he won't be all that keen to sign the bill into law if it arrived on his desk. So if this stands, no serious chance of triggering the release of the files. Therefore, is there any point? Well, there are several. First of all, it could still contribute to the overall pressure on the government, which finally does trigger the release of the files, with only victims' names redacted, nothing else. Second, it's a very tense political game. Releasing the files is something which has a lot of support across all sorts of voters, including MAGA supporters. It's something that every faction in American politics says they want released, and something they all say every other faction doesn't want released. But the only faction provably suppressing the release of the files is, of course, MAGA. Their grand poobah could release them tomorrow, and actually did promise to release them months ago. I would imagine that the vote would pass quite easily in the House. After all, even if there are other Democrats or Republicans who don't really want to see the release of the files, because it's going to implicate a lot of senior people, including donors of both parties, they know that others will throw themselves on the live grenade for them. So no House representative voting in favour of the bill next week is going to trigger the release of the file, so it's totally safe. There's no significant number of voters who would want the files blocked. Politically easy just to vote in favour. I would be very interested to hear the justifications for any voting against, although a few may stay away altogether. Maybe they've got an important fishing trip or something, right? The Democrats will, of course, make a big fuss of any Republicans voting against, and the Republicans will do likewise if any Democrats do so. So ideally, no Democrats will vote against it, because, why would they? And some Republicans might. And if that happens, then the Democrats get to claim that the only people voting against were Republicans covering up for their rapist in chief. And then, of course, when the vote passes, because it would seem mad for me to be, how would it be defeated? The pressure then falls on the Senate. There'll be no good reason for the Senate Republicans to block the vote themselves. They will do, and Democratic senators will presumably make a fuss about that. And all the while it forces Trump to have to keep talking about it, to have to describe anyone wanting to see the files released as being stupid or anti-American or gullibly falling for a Democrat trick, which is not likely to cut much ice when the big MAGA podcasters are completely committed to wanting the files released, including the client list, which the government now denies even exists, despite saying it did exist back at the start of the year. Above all, this is the one thing which really splits Trump from his base. The fact that Trump claims the economy is doing great, despite struggling Americans going, well, it ain't doing great for me, mate. That's not going to cost him support. The fact that the jobs market is going so badly that the government are now saying that the latest jobs figures will probably never be released, that's irrelevant. Taking away their affordable healthcare will not turn them against Trump somehow. Even their own kids dying to Victorian diseases won't do it. But protecting child rapists will, because that's what Trump is doing. And if the Democrats can claim that Trump isn't just protecting them, but one of them, that could be momentous in the fight back against authoritarian control, because that's what's at stake here. Let's just hope that despite their general tomfoolery, the Democrats see the importance of this one major weapon that they have against Trump. There you go. Got to the end of that. Wasn't even gratuitously unkind towards the orange one. Barely mentioned him, in fact. World kindness day still intact. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and please subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'll see you later.